Welcome back to the deep dive. And listen, before we even get started, I have to ask you something. Have you ever, walked into a meeting or maybe just scrolled through your dating apps and felt like the world is operating on a hidden, confusing set of rules? Rules that seem specifically stacked against you as a man.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're playing a game where the referee isn't just betting against you, he's actually rewriting the rule book while you're on the field.
It's that feeling, that logic, the old way where A plus B equals C, that it's left the building.
Yeah.
And something else, something much more volatile and emotionally charged has taken its place.
Exactly. And today's deep dive is, well, honestly, it's a dangerous one. We are digging into a book that some people would say shouldn't even exist. It's pure intellectual ammunition for men who are tired of being gaslit.
It really is.
But before we unlock this, do yourself a favor, smash that like button and subscribe right now. You do not want to miss what we're uncovering, because the algorithms, they are certainly not going to promote this for us.
No, they are not. We're talking about the ebook Consternation, Water to Women by Conrad Riker. And dangerous is the right word. Riker isn't pulling any punches. He's arguing that what we call leftism or woke culture,
Right.
it's not actually a political movement at all.
Right.
We think it's politics, but he says we're misdiagnosing the disease.
And this is the hook that got me immediately. He claims it's a maternal cult.
A maternal cult.
He says we are witnessing the death of the West because of a gynocentric conspiracy that's driven by repressed motherhood and weaponized emotion.
And that is a massive claim.
It's a huge claim. So if you want the full blueprint for this, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now and buy Consternation, Water to Women. But for now, let's try to break down what he even means by gynocentric.
So gynocentrism, literally it means a system that's centered on women. But Riker takes it much further. He argues that historically, our institutions, they were built on masculine principles, competence, hierarchy, logic, objective truth. But over the last few decades, those same institutions have been captured and repurposed to serve feminine imperatives.
Imperatives like consensus, safety,
Emotional comfort, nurturing.
and he lays out a whole roadmap for this capture. We're going to look at the maternal void, the weaponization of language,
We're just fascinated.
the capture of HR and universities, and then finally his strategy for how men can actually rebuild civilization. But let's start with the diagnosis. Riker talks about this idea of consternation. What is he getting at?
Consternation is that feeling. That anxiety and confusion men feel when their natural instincts to build, to compete, to speak the truth are suddenly treated as threats.
Okay.
But Riker traces the source of this not to politics, but to biology. And this is what he calls the maternal void.
Okay, so unpack that for us. Because usually when we talk about feminism, it's about rights or economics. Riker started with biology.
Yes. His whole central argument is that the biological drive to nurture is innate in women. It's hardwired. It doesn't just, vanish because society tells them to prioritize a career because they choose not to have children.
Right.
That energy is like water. It has to flow somewhere. And if that instinct is repressed by feminism or careerism, he says it mutates.
It mutates. That's a disturbing image.
It is. Because instead of raising children, which is the natural outlet, it gets directed elsewhere. It turns into this obsession with pets. Or worse, it turns into a desire to mother society itself, to treat grown adults like infants who need to be swaddled.
He gives this absolutely shocking example in the book I have to share because it just perfectly illustrates this mutation.
Yeah.
There was a headline about a woman in Los Angeles who spent $52,000 on a birthday party for her French bulldog.
$52,000. Just think about the resources involved in that.
It's insane. A DJ, vegan cupcakes, a photo booth for dogs. And this woman, she openly admits she's not ready for children.
Yes.
And Riker points this out as the ultimate symptom. We're replacing children with fur babies.
It's displaced nurturing. But Riker says it goes darker than just spoiling a dog.
Okay.
When you treat a dog like a child, it's kind of funny. When you treat society like a child, it's totalitarian.
Right.
Because a mother has absolute authority over an infant. The infant can't make dangerous choices. The infant must be kept safe at all costs. And Riker argues that modern women, having rejected actual motherhood, are projecting that safety at all costs framework onto the workplace, onto politics, everywhere.
Which leads us right into his analysis of borderline personality disorder, or BPD. This is the part that really made me stop and think. He calls it the BPD continuum.
Right. The book cites a statistic that 75% of borderline personality disorder diagnoses are women. Now, clinically, BPD involves emotional instability, an intense fear of abandonment, and splitting.
And splitting is that black and white thinking.
Exactly. You're either an angel or a devil. There's no in between.
And Riker's argument isn't just about the diagnosis itself, right? It's about how society is now reacting to it.
Precisely. Riker's argument is that in a healthy society, these traits are treated. We try to help people stabilize. But in our current gynocentric culture, we are rewarding these traits. We've created a culture that actually incentivizes BPD behavior.
You see this all over social media. Riker mentions the temperature tiers trend. I had no idea this was a thing until I read the book.
It's bizarre. Women filming themselves crying, I mean literally weeping, because their latte wasn't the right temperature or their delivery order was wrong.
And they get millions of views for it.
Millions of likes. It's validation.
And then there's girl dinner.
Girl dinner. Just eating snacks or cereal like a toddler and framing it as some kind of, feminist act of rebellion.
So Riker's take on this is that it's all arrested development.
It's a rejection of adult responsibility. I mean, if you can act like an infant or demand to be treated like one and get social validation for it, why would you ever grow up? It's a cultural regression where emotional volatility gets framed as authenticity. And if you, as a man, try to introduce logic into that situation, like, hey, it's just a coffee, let's fix it.
You're the enemy.
You're the enemy, because you're invalidating their lived experience.
And that volatility brings us to the next section, because this isn't just happening on TikTok. This psychology is being weaponized against men in the real world, specifically in the office.
Yeah.
Riker has this chapter on language as a female weapon.
And this is just critical for any man in the corporate world to understand. Riker identifies a linguistic landmine. The phrase, I feel unsafe.
I feel unsafe. It sounds so innocent, right? Like
Yeah.
if there's a loose wire or a guy with a knife, sure, you're unsafe.
But that's not how it's used. In this gynocentric framework that Riker describes, that phrase overrides logic. It overrides evidence, due process, everything. And notice the word feel. It's not, I am unsafe. It's, I feel unsafe. Riker argues that in the modern West, subjective female emotion has replaced objective male reality as the standard of truth. If a woman feels unsafe, the man is guilty.
The feeling is the fact.
The feeling is the fact.
Right.
Reality doesn't matter.
It's a way to bypass any debate entirely. You can't argue with a feeling.
You can't bring data to a feeling fight. And Riker breaks this down into a specific tactical sequence he calls GSR.
GSR. Okay, let's walk through this. How does it work?
It's the primary mechanism of female conflict resolution, according to Riker.
Right.
Men fight overtly, shouting, maybe a physical confrontation, then it's over.
Right.
Women, he argues, fight covertly by destroying your reputation. It starts with gossip.
Gossip. So planting the seed. Dave makes people uncomfortable.
Exactly. No specifics, just a vibe. Then comes shame, isolating the target, making other people afraid to associate with him.
And then finally, rally.
Rally, mobilizing the group, usually through HR, to expel the threat.
And he talks about how this just scales up from high school mean girls straight into the boardroom. The stakes just get higher.
Mm-hmm. He brings up that famous story of the Google engineer James Damore.
That is the textbook case. Damore wrote a memo. He cited peer-reviewed research about biological differences in career preferences between men and women. He was calm, he was logical, he was trying to solve a problem.
And what happened?
He didn't get a counter memo debating his facts. He got fired.
Why?
Because female employees claimed his facts made them feel unsafe. That is GSR in action.
Wow.
The gossip was that he was sexist, the shame was the media pile-on, and the rally was the internal demand for his firing.
Riker calls people who use these tactics cry bullies. And I love that term. It's someone who weaponizes their victimhood to dominate you.
It's a powerful concept. There's a Harvard Business Review case study he mentions in the book that just perfectly illustrates the cry bully. A female manager is getting grilled about her department's overspending. It's a numbers meeting, pure logic.
Okay.
She can't explain where the money went, so what does she do? She starts crying.
And the whole meeting just stops.
Instantly. The men in the room, they panic. They apologize. They hand her a tissue. And most importantly, they stop asking about the money.
And she gets the budget approved.
She gets the budget approved. Her tears became leverage. In that moment, logic died and emotional manipulation won. That's the cry bully dynamic.
It's terrifying because you can't fight it. If you keep pressing about the money while she's crying, you look like a monster.
Right.
But if you back down, you lose the business case.
And Riker says this is not an accident. This is the result of our institutions being captured. We have to look at how the university system and HR departments were just fundamentally transformed.
Okay, let's talk about the feminist degree scam. Riker points out that universities, they weren't always like this.
No, not at all. They used to be bastions of the trivium logic, rhetoric, grammar. They were about pursuing objective truth. But Riker argues they've been turned into ideological factories. He notes that 90% of degrees in education and psychology now go to women.
And these aren't always degrees that lead to, high-paying jobs in the open market.
Exactly. You have graduates leaving school with what, $110,000 in debt to go work a job at Starbucks? But here's the key insight from the book. Because they lack marketable skills for the hard economy, building bridges, writing code, they have to enter the soft economy.
The empathy economy.
The empathy economy. They become activists. They enter HR, diversity coordination, administration.
So the university system creates the soldiers, and then they get deployed into HR departments to police the men who are actually doing the productive work.
That is institutional capture. And once they capture HR, they enforce a war on merit. Riker cites a National Bureau of Economic Research study showing that high-achieving Asian males were 23% less likely to get into top universities compared to others with lower grades.
It's the punishment of competence.
That's exactly how Riker sees it. In the Manosphere review he's describing, competence is now labeled toxic masculinity.
Right. If you enforce standards, if you hold people accountable, you're oppressive.
And HR departments, which are 73% female, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, function as ideological cells. They are not there to increase productivity. They are there to enforce emotional compliance.
So you have a workspace where you can't speak the truth, you can't enforce standards, and you have to walk on eggshells to avoid making anyone feel unsafe. But it gets even darker when we move from the office to the home. We have to talk about the legal and financial trap men are walking into.
Riker calls it the divorce economy.
And the stats here are just. They completely flip the common narrative. We're always told women are the victims in divorce.
But Riker points to the data. Women initiate 70% of divorces.
70%.
He describes men in the system as financial hostages. The argument is that alimony and child support have been twisted from their original purpose.
Which was to support a wife who couldn't work.
Right, a dependent.
Yeah.
Into a revenue stream for women who just want to leave a marriage because they're unhappy or bored.
There's that story in the book about the Florida woman. It's so visceral. She's living in a beachfront condo, sipping mojitos, posting it all on Instagram, all funded by child support.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the father, who actually wants to see his kids, is living in a van because the payments are so cripplingly high.
It's the death of fatherhood. The legal system operates on the best interest of the child standard, which sounds great, right?
Oh, of course.
But Riker argues this phrase is used as a cover to erase fathers. When 80% of custody goes to mothers, the system is telling men, your only role is to pay. You are a wallet, not a parent. You are a utility.
And Riker connects this rejection of responsibility to what he calls the abortion apocalypse. This is a heavy section of the book.
It is. He cites the 1 billion abortions since 1950 statistic. But his analysis isn't religious, it's psychological. He views it through the lens of this maternal void. He argues it is the ultimate psychological rejection of responsibility. It allows a woman to avoid the self-discipline and sacrifice that motherhood requires, essentially keeping her in that girl dinner, perpetual adolescence phase of life.
So it's all connected. The dog parties, the crying at work, the divorce initiation, the abortion. It's a civilization-wide refusal to take on duty.
A retreat from duty into comfort. And that brings us to the most important part of the book. We've diagnosed the illness. We've seen the weapons. The big question is, what do we do?
Right.
And Riker is very, very clear on this. He says, you will not find balance here.
He's not talking about reform, is he?
No, not at all. He says this is a war. And you don't negotiate with a system that views your very existence as a problem. His solution starts with one thing, walking away. You might know this as going galt.
Men checking out. We're seeing this in the enrollment numbers.
Male university enrollment is down 15%. And Riker cheers this on. He says men are leaving these hostile environments and moving toward the trades, welding, electrical work, construction.
Yeah.
Places where, as Riker says, feelings don't matter.
Feelings don't matter. That's the sanctuary.
Think about it. The bridge holds or it doesn't. The circuit works or it doesn't. You can't cry bully a circuit board.
Right.
You can't file an HR complaint against a welding torch. Riker argues men need to retreat to the world of things, where objective reality still reigns supreme.
I love that. Real-world competency as a shield. But for the men who want to stay in the intellectual fight, or who are stuck in the corporate world, he talks about reclaiming the trivium.
This goes back to those medieval university roots: logic, grammar, and rhetoric. Riker argues these are the skills that immunize you against emotional manipulation.
How does that work in practice? Like if HR calls you into a meeting.
It means you can deconstruct the language games they're playing. If someone says, "I feel unsafe," you use logic to ask, what specific action caused a safety violation? You use grammar to parse their definitions. You use rhetoric to stand your ground without getting emotional yourself. The moment you get emotional, you lose. Riker says you must become a stone wall of logic.
But ultimately, he suggests we need to build our own things.
Parallel institutions. Don't try to save the university that hates you. Don't try to fix the HR department that wants to fire you. Let them burn under the weight of their own incompetence. Build new businesses that reward merit. Build private schools for your sons. Build homesteads.
It's a radical shift. It's not about begging for a seat at their table anymore. It's about building your own table in a separate room.
Maybe in a separate building entirely. And his final piece of advice is the most personal. Stop apologizing. Stop funding the system that hates you. Stop acquiescing to the emotional blackmail. If you didn't do anything wrong, never, ever apologize just to keep the peace. Because peace is not the goal of the gynocentric system. Submission is.
This is powerful. Stop apologizing. It seems so simple, but in this climate, it's a revolutionary act.
It is. This book is, it's essentially a declaration of war against gynocentrism. Riker is providing a manual for men to understand what he calls the mass psychosis of the modern West. He wants men to see the code behind the matrix so they can finally unplug.
And if you want the full code, if you want the full arsenal of facts, the history, the linguistic breakdowns we just skimmed the surface of, you need to get the book. I'm serious. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now and buy Consternation Water to Women by Conrad Riker.
Yeah.
This is the manual you need.
And you should keep up with him. He's writing more on this, tracking the slaps in real time. You can follow him at Conrad Riker on Substack.
Do it. Get the intellectual ammunition you need. And listen, make sure you like and subscribe to The Deep Dive. We're going to keep bringing you the red pill truths that the mainstream media is too terrified to touch.
Absolutely.
Stay awake, gentlemen. We'll see you in the next Deep Dive.